somewhere along the way, Kelsey got hepatitis C. We're not sure if it was the dumps back in Ecuador. We served there for a couple years, and then we've been in Mexico for about 8 years. So somewhere along the line, Kelsey got hepatitis C. Her body fought it off, and then I think that made her body super strong, and it started to fight itself. And that's where Hashimoto's came in. And then later, she had autoimmune disease in her gallbladder. That was removed back November 21st, her birthday. They did a liver biopsy, which also showed disease in her liver. She had autoimmune in her small intestine, also her stomach lining. She was having seizures, and so there was some autoimmune precursor stuff going on in her brain. So there was just an onslaught against Kelsey. Extreme pain like you cannot imagine. I mean, those of you in Daniel Academy would see her from time to time. If you just look at her, her face has color. She was this color for 6 months. She was white, but white, white, white. And even as we went in to see the doctors, they were amazed at just how she looked. Just a piece of how we felt. It's impossible. Those of you who have experienced chronic pain, and I know there's many amongst us, but just chronic pain, what it does to you as a parent. Literally, we felt as if we were imprisoned. And every day they would bring out Kelsey before us and torture her. And there was nothing we could do. That's just a small glimpse, and I don't know if you can capture that. But every day Kelsey was just before us in pain all day, every day. Leslie, my wife, carried the majority of that burden, and she was just, but helpless. After 8, 10, 12 hours of holding Kelsey, going, what do I do? I can't help this one. I remember we went and saw the movie Juno, and as we saw this movie, it was raining and snowing, so I went to get the car, and I got to the car, and I just broke down weeping and saying, God, if only my daughter had something as easy as being pregnant at age 14. If only that would be the solution, because the story resolves. She puts her baby up for adoption. She has life as normal again. And literally, we could not see life as normal again. We just saw this ongoing pain. The doctor's telling us, we don't know what to do. Obviously, she has some disease in her body, but we can't stop it. We can slow it down. She was taking 30-some pills a day, not 30 different medications, but 30-some pills a day. She was medicated day and night with mostly pain medication. I'm just going to pass it on to Leslie, and I want you to hear a mother's heart for her daughter.
I really want Kelsey to share because I think it's her heart. For me, I think just in the day-to-day, I think I really was preparing to live this out. Like believing in the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living, but yet living, trying to be faithful. I want to be found faithful. I want to be found steady. You know, all the songs keep going through, the journey of the Lord is the light of the wilderness. Okay, I'm going to live in here and honor you and honor you and honor you. And I'm praying for healing, but trying to live in that day-to-day of being honorable and love her well in the midst of it. I think when the healing actually came, I think I'm still healing. I think it didn't hit me quite as fast as she went to heaven. You know, she closed her eyes and says, I see Jesus. I close my eyes and I still see that little girl looking at me going, it hurts. And I'm trying to. So I'm still in the process of going, I wanted this, so I needed it, I was desperate for it, and here it is. And I'm just, so my heart is still healing for my daughter. And every day I look at her, I'm going, oh, I mean, look at her face, and no dark eyes, and just a smile, and Kelsey's back, and I'm just, the rejoicing comes in layers for me. But we were in the hospital, we were 2 extended stays, like 10 days, and people kept coming and praying, and one day, Daniel had come and Rodney had come and prayed, and it was just really hard. Doctors didn't know what to do and come in the room and say, Kelsey, you're a headache, or Kelsey, you're a mystery. And that was kind of the beginning of every morning. And when they'd come and pray for you, it was like, I think Kelsey we just kind of came to the end of ourselves. And that's why I'm going to let Kelsey start talking.
So Kelsey, come on up to here.
Just before the day before Easter, I was sitting in my hospital bed. After Mr. Lim and Mr. Henderson left, I was just not doing well. I was bummed out. I was mad. I was confused. I sat before God and I said, God, how long? How long can you watch me sit here? How long? How many more days do I have to sit in this hospital before someone finds out what's wrong? I went And I went and I sat by the window, and I just stood out the window and just waited for something to happen, something to hit me. And then I was taken in a vision to heaven, and I stood before the throne of God, and I saw God and Jesus, and I stood before them. And I was in my hospital gown with my little IV tube thingy, and I walked before them, and I looked at Jesus, and I said, Jesus, how long? How long? And he looked at me, and he stood up, and he took these scissors about the size of an average door, and he cut the IV off, and he went back and sat down. Then the Father God came off the throne. He took the IV out of my hand, and he threw it on the floor, and he said, it's done. He put clothes on my body, and he said, through the testimony alone, people be raised from the dead and walk out of wheelchairs. Now go and tell it. Go. I woke up in chronic pain. Came out of this vision the next day. Easter Sunday was the worst day of my life. I was put back on IV drip. I was put back on IV pain medicine. Again, I was back to that hopelessness, that lost. I didn't know what was going on. I was just in heaven, and he said it was over, yet I sit here. That day, the worst day of my life, the day of his son was risen. And here I am, and I feel like I'm on my deathbed. And it was just a time, that point before we got into Children's Mercy, I remember having hope in my heart that maybe if we got into Children's Mercy, something would change. Maybe if we saw these doctors, something would change. I would look at my numbers, look at my tests, and see something different. Getting into Children's Mercy changed nothing. They looked at me and said I was a mystery and I was a headache. They couldn't do anything. And suddenly, all hopeless, all the hope that I had in my heart was gone, and I was brought back to that child who sat before the Father and said, God, how long? Because I sit here alone. I sat alone with him. Alone I sat for a month after that vision, waiting for something to happen. I got out of the hospital, and my dad had gone to Colombia, and he came back. And a couple days after he got back, someone came up to him and said, there's this revival going on in Florida, and you need to take Kelsey there. And I just remember we were just thinking about it and praying about it, just like, we don't have money for this. We can't afford it right now. It's just, hold back for a while. And, God, if you want to do something, let's do something. And the next day, my dad went to the prayer room, and this guy came up to him and said that, I feel like I want to pay for your family to go to Florida. And so we did. And we went to Florida. And just hearing stories about the revival before we left, we heard about just people watching on the internet and getting gold teeth, watching on the internet and getting healed, just driving by the building and instantly getting healed. I opened the car door, and I'm instantly crippled in pain. I can't walk. I can hardly breathe. It hurts so bad. And again, I was just at that place in my head, okay, God, why? What are you doing? We're here. What are you thinking? What's going on? And I'm just going to let my mom share the story of how we got in, because I was just too much pain to actually remember.
Just quickly, there's so much God in this. There's so many stories of just getting in the door. I mean, we got there too late. I mean, it was packed. We were around the corner. I got out of the car, and Kelsey couldn't even stand or sit in the sun. And so I can't even tell you my own thoughts that day, just not understanding and being afraid. And I just kind of scooted her forward towards the door, and so we'll wait in the shade. And we ended up sitting next to a grandma whose daughter was in line, and they were letting in 100 people at a time. And so the line kept moving, and the grandma got left behind. So I was trying to help her up and move her along, and all of a sudden I'm moving with the line. So I asked Kelsey to come. Come, Kelsey, come up. We'll just walk her to the door. I didn't want to cut. I didn't want to presume. I just was trying to just stay in the background. In the end, we ended up, by a miracle, we were the last people out in the door. I mean, just weird story. We get in the door, there's no room but in the balcony, and she can't even walk. And so I'm dragging her up the stairs, trembling. Leonard's outside with Christian way out in line, and my world was spinning. And we got up to the balcony, and it was full. There weren't even any chairs. It was just, okay. So I just sat her in the end of a chair. I said, please, may she just sit here? She's in pain. I'll just stand. I don't need a seat. May she just sit there. And this whole family ended up just having dreams of us before and visions. I mean, the stories, it was not me. I would never even move forward. I just was waiting everybody else was moving us. God had moved in about 5, 6 different hearts were like, this word was for you. And we got down there, people were like, I was looking for you. God had said, this word was for your daughter. I was like, okay, because I just had no courage of my own to push her there. I didn't want to be so many people are sitting there waiting for healing. Everybody's longing for him, you know, and it was hard for me to presume this one was for her, and it was.
Before I got on stage, just 2 of Todd Bentley's guys were holding me, and they carried me on stage, and we just sat on stage, and, well, we stood, I kind of just hang there, and we were just on stage, and waiting for Todd to come over, and just trying to listen, and just trying to worship, and at the point of such pain that I was at, just tears running down my face, and I didn't know what to do, I didn't know what to think. The only thing that I could say was, God, please, please, God, please, God. Because I can't walk out of here the way I walked in here. It just can't happen. So Todd Bentley comes over and he looks at me. And he says, is this the Lord? And his guys look at him and say, no, this is pain. I look into his eyes and I can see them fill up with tears. And under his breath I can hear him say, I have a big God who does even bigger things. And he looks at me, and he puts his hand on my head, and he prays for me, and I fall over. And I instantly get taken up to heaven. And when I was sitting in heaven, I was in the surgical room, laying on a bed. And the last couple months, I've had surgeries and scopes, and so I'd been in a lot of these rooms, and so I was pretty used to it. And normally when I'm sitting in one of these rooms, the anesthesiologist is right over my face, and he has a mask, and he's just putting me to sleep and just talking to me. And when I look up, I see Jesus, and I see his face looking down at me. And he looks at me, and he says, Kelsey, it's okay. He says, just keep looking in my eyes, and I'll keep you safe. It's okay. And that went on for probably 25 more minutes. It was just him and I alone. We sat alone. I got lost into everything he was. I got lost into his eyes. I got lost into that face. And then he smiled at me. And I looked at him and I was like, wait a minute. Okay, what's going to happen? You know, I see this smile and I know there's something going on. And suddenly I can feel 2 angels in my stomach. I can feel them right where the pain was. I could feel them putting the pieces back together. I could feel them fixing the organs. I could feel them going on what was going on and everything. I could feel them fixing it, taking things that weren't supposed to be in there. I could feel them working. Then they turned me over, and I can feel them working on my body. And because I was on all of this medication and I was diagnosed with a lot of autoimmune diseases, my body was really weak. On top of it, just even on a good day, it wasn't much walking. And it was just, I could feel them fixing my legs, and I could feel them fixing my back and my arms. And everything that hurt, everything that was sore was suddenly better. I could feel them going through my brain. The seizures that were going on, things that they couldn't explain, I could feel them being fixed instantly. I woke up and I sat up. And one of Todd's guys came and he sat next to me and he looked at me. And he says, what do you feel? And I looked at him. And I said, I don't feel anything. And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean? Todd was seeing angels around you. What do you mean you don't feel anything? And I looked at him and I smiled and I said, no, you don't get it. I have not felt something in 7 months. I've been in chronic pain and not been able to move. I stood up. I said, for 5 years, I lost my energy. And I can feel it flowing through my body even now. Tears running down my face, all I could say was, thank you, God. Thank you for what you